Hello, everybody. This is Rebecca Karchere. Oop, I'm shaking the table already. With Exploring Energy in Everyday Life. And
Mary Von Ohlen, welcome.
welcome, everybody. We're going to be talking about liver health and addiction. And so why are we talking about the liver and addiction? Well, simply because let's not assume that everyone knows, let's just, at the basic level, we're talking about a major organ that has to deal with breaking down or making toxins safe as they come into the body. And it's a filter. So it's binding things, getting the dangerous substances in a safe substance, so to speak, and then so it can move out of the body. So when we talk about addiction, we're talking about someone, I guess we should say we're actually talking about alcohol addiction, right? Isn't that what we're specifically talking about?
Well, primarily, I think people primarily associate alcoholism and alcohol abuse with liver problems, but we know that also prescription medications and over-the-counter medications and recreational drugs are taxing on the liver as well.
Yes. Yes.
So keep that in mind. We might focus a lot on alcohol, but realize that all drugs affect the liver. Like Rebecca's talking about, the liver is responsible for processing those toxins and dealing with the ramifications of them.
Right. And then just to be clear, the second organ responsible for anything that the liver, I should say, the second order of business after the substance has been neutralized by the liver is the kidneys have to pick up some of the slack as well. And so, we're not really going to get into kidney health, but that's also an issue. But so with the liver, it's emotionally speaking, we're talking about the emotion of anger, which when it comes to anger, it's a two-way street. You could become angry from something, something that irritates you, that makes you angry. But then there's the other side of it, that biochemically, if the liver is not firing well, it can produce anger. It's kind of, you can look at it from both ways, right?
Sure. Yeah, I was going to say, and it's like you can hinder liver function if you have a lot of unresolved and unprocessed anger. Right, just like you can hinder it with the chemical substances we're talking about.
Yes.
But on the flip side, if it's already congested for whatever reason, whether it's biochemically or energetically, emotionally, when it's congested, I think we're more susceptible to react with anger.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, it becomes more of a default response. Yeah.
Which makes me think of, Rebecca, sorry to interrupt again. Sometimes, we've all, if you haven't experienced it personally, hopefully, but maybe, we all at least know someone who's experienced like getting angry when they've had too much to drink. So that's not surprising to me that's a common emotional reaction for some people who drink a lot or when they drink a lot. Makes sense.
Right. Right. So it's one way of saying that, for the liver to cry out and say, stop what you're doing, please. It's one way of looking at it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Please pause and reflect upon your behavior now. So anyway, so there's a key, back when I was in school for nutrition, I did my thesis on alcohol metabolism. And I found that primarily the biggest B vitamin, so when we talk about alcohol and liver, that, you think about, when you do your research, you start to realize that this is about water-soluble vitamins that get impacted first. But B3, which is niacin, is one of the most important B vitamins in alcohol metabolism. So it's something that gets depleted with alcohol consumption and needs to be replenished even more so after. So that's a big one. The next one is B6. But I want to stress that people don't think about B3, but think about B3 when you think about alcohol. Anyway, as you were saying.
And you know who knew about that was actually the founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, Bill Wilson.
Yeah.
And later on in his years, when he was still alive, he became a big proponent of vitamin therapy for for recovering alcoholics like him who still struggled with depression and things like that. And he got involved with, I think, Dr. Abram Hoffer, who was heavily involved in vitamin therapy at the time. And anyway, so all this research started coming out, or he was trying to be an advocate and promote, basically more research for alcoholics and recovering alcoholics to, for niacin deficiency, because that's a huge piece of it. And for him, that affected, I think, when he started with vitamin therapy, specifically the B vitamins, most specifically niacin, he I think improved his depression in recovery. So that's huge.
Yeah. So not to bore anyone with biochemistry, niacin forms a coenzyme that, if you look at glycolysis, you see it show up over and over and over again so anyway, it's fun to look at. But yeah, so now the thing with the B vitamins and vitamin C, because that's also water soluble, is that alcohol acts as a diuretic. So you're going to the bathroom and you're peeing away all those water soluble vitamins. So that's just to give, someone okay, that's how that works. Then they need to be replaced. Okay. So anyway.
Yeah. And that reminds me too, that I think I had read at some point in time that alcoholic cirrhosis, like not until maybe the 70s, they used to attribute the cause of it primarily to the vitamin deficiency caused by heavy drinking, which is true in part, but also alcohol itself being toxic to the liver. And so it's really about that interplay of both, because one compounds the other.
Right. So what started first, right? The chicken or the egg? So just to recap though, anyone that's struggling with addiction, they're struggling in some aspect of their self-worth. And that's more of what, although I started studying nutrition, I'm more interested in the emotional and spiritual aspect of it. And so you want to look at what is the addiction masking, what's underneath. There's usually, we were talking about anger. Anger is a bravado that is a macho that masks fear. So what's the fear? And, it's good to explore that. Most people who are drinking, for instance, are masking, or even prescription drugs. They're masking their feelings. And, and they're usually either they don't want to talk about something, or they're too ashamed to talk about something. I mean, it's endless. It's endless. But the point is that it acts as a mask. And that, if you have the awareness to maybe talk to somebody or work out the issue, the addiction becomes less, there's no need for it. There's no, it's like, also the solution is always love. So if we can get to that place of love, then you can make a decision, a conscious decision from that loving place. Maybe the substance doesn't really serve anymore, right? You've been filled by what you really need.
Yeah, like what you said, the alcohol and or other types of drugs serve as not only a mask, but a false sense of power, right?
Yeah.
So because if we're in fear, and especially when you're not really conscious and aware of it, then probably in the beginning, people just pick up the drink or the drug, and then they start to feel, it's like liquid courage, right? That concept. So they feel more comfortable in their own skin. So the self-esteem issues, at least temporarily, improve or seem to improve, but it's just masked. It's false sense of power. Until then, like you talked about, but then the shame and everything builds up usually from the consequences of not being in your true state of power, and the consequences of some of the behaviors from drinking or abusing other drugs. And, it's not until people can put down the drink or the drug, that they can really truly be able to address all what you're talking about, Rebecca, which is in essence, what's really behind the reasons. It's like, it talks about in recovery literature, alcohol is but a symptom, and you got to get down to the causes. And like you said, once people resolve those, which it's a process, but really get into their true state of power, like you said, then the addiction's less of an issue, because you won't even be seeking it. The obsession gets removed.
Yeah.
because you're no longer obsessed with changing the way you feel or accessing some false sense of power.
Nice. So with someone who doesn't have good confidence or good self-esteem, they tend to manifest hypoglycemia. They tend to go hand in hand. And a hypoglycemic person, whether they're aware of it or not, is going to seek out a quick sugar. So that's one scenario, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in turn, that person now has damaged their liver, and it can recover. But we're talking about in a chronic situation, recovery becomes more and more challenging, and the hypoglycemia becomes even more of an issue. So so that liver, because it controls blood sugar, it loses even more. It didn't even have control in the first place. Right now, it really doesn't have control. Yeah. So anyway, so that you could see the spiraling. Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you want to talk about more of the statistics, or?
Well, I mean, I was looking at an old article that I wrote several years back, just before we got on our call here, and some of the recent research at that time, I think it was written in 2009. We can link to it below if people want to see the statistics that I'll reference. But essentially, the big ones were about how daily drinkers are the most at risk for liver-related diseases, alcoholic liver-related disease. When we're talking about alcoholic liver disease, we're talking about there's fatty liver. And Rebecca, you can explain that a little bit in a second, if you will. There's cirrhosis, which is really bad, right? I mean, that's where you're going to even end up with like scar tissue, and that's where, like you said, when it's chronic and in a later stage, so the liver can repair itself, with the right help, and support. But when it's pretty far gone, there can be some serious damage. It's harder to repair. So the sooner you intervene and stop and change and begin the repair process, the better. And then there's also alcoholic hepatitis, and there's and in general, one of the things is that I'd read that alcohol is the #1 cause of liver cancer in the Western world, which is interesting. I had a client not too long ago who I met him a little too late. He was stage 4 liver cancer, and he was one of the rare ones who didn't touch alcohol at all. But you know what he had?
What?
Unresolved anger. Lifelong unresolved anger. And had some of the ism, the family ism stuff, whether his father was a rageaholic, I think, so it's just another example where the liver is affected not only by these toxins, but also the emotions. So basically it's also the longer that you drink on a regular basis, like a daily basis, or binge drink. Obviously, binge drinking is extremely taxing on the liver as well. A lot of the research is on the daily drinking, at least back then, several years back. And the daily drinking, the longer you drink, the more likely you are for these alcoholic liver diseases. But I think what's important to realize is that I think, well, Rebecca, you can speak to this really well as also as a medical intuitive, not just a nutritionist, right? Because when you work with clients, I know that you're able to see or sense what's going on, almost like X-ray vision.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Right? Your superpower, and to pick up on things also that are more subtle, that perhaps have not yet been picked up by maybe one of your patient's medical doctors, or they haven't even had it looked at, because the symptoms aren't showing up. The symptoms are the last to show up sometime, usually, right?
Yeah.
So people might have, I'm sure often see, oh, your liver looks congested, or you're seeing the starts of fatty liver, and maybe they haven't had that diagnosed and they had no idea, right? So it's something to consider that, I can throw out some statistics, about, most people with cirrhosis, have been drinking at least, 10 or 20 years heavily, but I've also met people who are in their 20s that had really bad liver health, and had to be intervened, and thankfully they caught it in time. But it's really a matter of awareness, and a lot of the times, many people who don't even drink, there's non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Okay, so our diet impacts, our diet definitely impacts our liver health as well. and like we said before, anger, emotions.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we could talk about this over and over again.
I know.
So I don't know how much, I'm trying to think. So we talked about, this is what we want to talk about because you mentioned fatty liver. So one thing that I noticed with fatty liver is there's two B vitamins that the liver is supposed to be producing themselves. One is choline, the other one is inositol. And these are, the inositol helps with sugar in the blood, hypoglycemia. Choline, though, is more for mobilizing fat and breaking down fat. So it's a two-way street. You can look at it from both ways. The more you drink, the lower your choline production is, and then you see the more fat accumulating in the liver. So yeah, it depends on which. You gotta look at it from both ways. But what else do I want to talk about? And the thing is that the liver is so involved in blood sugar metabolism that people don't realize is when you are fasting, in a fasting state, there's a level of there's hormones that are supposed to be set in motion to help raise the blood sugar, but you're going to lose that control. There's what's called glycogenolysis, which is the breakdown of glycogen to become fuel. But again, that's a function of the liver, and if the liver is not working right, how can it do that? And so yeah, it's very interconnected here. But let's talk about what's restorative for the liver. Would be number one on an emotional level would be forgiveness. Obviously, forgive whoever you're angry at, if there is such a thing. There might just be a concept. It could be an unknown, meaning it could be passed down from family energy. I mean, if you really dive into it, you could have just been born with it, and it's not even yours, and that's a whole other esoteric conversation. But forgiveness, in short. But the most popular plant or herb to literally restore the liver cells would be milk thistle, right? So if you're at the point where you suspect you might have alcohol, like liver damage, if you're taking prescription drugs, whatever your circumstances, there's no harm in picking up some milk thistle, whether it's capsule, a liquid extract, or tea, and start consuming that, even if it's 1 tablet a day, just to give it that support. Yeah.
I have used milk thistle.
Yeah, milk thistle is great.
That's great.
Yeah. And obviously dosing, giving yourself a dose of vitamin C every day, right? Or eating vitamin C foods, because vitamin C is water soluble. So, I mean, when you think of vitamin C, I mean, everyone thinks of citrus. So do some citrus, and then the dark green vegetables have a lot of vitamin C in them. The B6 actually comes primarily from grains, whole grains. That's a big source. Bananas have a lot of B6 in them. And then if you're someone who is looking to shift into better health, you probably most certainly want to supplement. If you just start eating a cleaner diet, I think that's going to take you a long time to get to where you want to go. Why don't you start making some big change?
Yeah, and deposits into the bank, because you've been depleting it for so long.
Right.
Yeah.
Don't just think
bank being your body.
Right. But I stopped it. No. Now you have to replenish.
Yeah.
Big time.
How do you feel about turmeric also? Or I've used curcumin supplements too for liver support.
Yeah.
I know that I've read somewhere along the lines, I heard a lecture from a naturopath or someone about curcumin being a supplement that's important for especially non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. I think it was the seminar I was attending.
Okay.
That came up. Yeah.
Good. So I don't know. Maybe we feel complete here, but why don't I want to just extend, if people want to reach out to me, if they have an issue they'd like me to, they like my 2 cents, feel free to contact me or email me, and I'd be happy to help. And yes, I do have X-ray vision when necessary. It's not like I don't have it on all the time, but if someone asks me a question, I will hone in on what's going on and give feedback that cannot be explained by normal medical, practice.
Absolutely. I mean, if you're in recovery at any stage of recovery, and you've never worked with someone in the holistic realm to look at your nutrition, your biochemical health, I strongly recommend working with Rebecca on that. And of course, like you mentioned, Rebecca, she's into the emotional and spiritual, underlying aspects as well. And that's certainly my focus these days too. As an addiction recovery coach, when I work with my addiction recovery clients, a lot of people will be involved perhaps in a 12-step process where they do look at all those different all the different anger and resentment and self-esteem issues and fears to identify them and shift them. But I like to help people with some of the accelerated tools from the holistic field that help me accelerate the process when I work with clients, because you really want to shift those things. And some people don't realize that you can, and there's ways to do it more efficiently and effectively so that it doesn't have to drag on. Just like you talked about, Rebecca, if you just address the diet and you don't supplement, it's going to take a while. And it's the same thing. I mean, you can kind of, okay, I want to try to practice forgiveness. I'll look at the anger and this and that, but there's tools from energy psychology and energy healing and different tips and tricks that we give our clients to help have a deeper shift and more lasting effect. And I'm all about shortcuts. If you can speed up the process in a healthy manner, let's do it, right? The good quick fixes, the healthy ones. So feel free to reach out to us. And anything that we mentioned, if there's resources that we mentioned in this episode, click to see the description below the video, and we'll have any links in there, and also our contact info.
Excellent. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Thanks. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share. See you next time.
Yes.